Hi, welcome back aboard the Earthmote. I'm Randall. Today, I want to talk about a topic that I think is really crucial to old school style games or OSR style games or games that really are focused on exploration, but I think they often get overlooked or hand waved away in modern editions of D&D. And that's really the idea of resource management. Now, obviously, modern editions of D&D do have some resource management aspects to them, whether that's managing spell slots or potions, things like that. But when I'm talking about resource management, I'm focusing more on things like food and water, light sources, inventory slots, and even the passage of time. I think a lot of people looking at these games from a modern lens really think those aspects can be trivial or boring, which is why they get pushed away, hand waved away. But I think they actually make for a meaningful game within the older versions of D&D, whether that's basic expert or original Dungeons and Dragons, because they constitute really meaningful choices. They can mean the difference between your character leveling up or not. And in the OSR, what you are carrying can often be the difference between victory or defeat, a creative solution, or, turning back for the way you came. So these things are really important, and they're important to understand and how to manage them within your game. So let's go ahead and explore why managing your resources is really so vital to these older style games and how they really kind of elevate those exploration-based games as well. Now, when I talk about resource management within the OSR, it is a broad concept. There's a lot of different things to think about. You have carrying capacity. Every item has a weight, and overburdened characters are slower, and they might also face other penalties. Those 1,000 gold pieces, they weigh a lot. They can slow you down, but they're also important and vital to your character's advancement if you're playing 1 gold equals 1 experience point. And this situation applies regardless of whether your game is using weight-based encumbrance or slot-based encumbrance. You still have a limited number, so they still need to be managed and carefully decided what you're going to take with you, what you're going to leave behind, and what you might sacrifice in order to get more treasure. Beyond carrying capacity, we have consumables. So torches that burn out in the dark, rations that fend off starvation, healing supplies that are limited and precious. These are all important to your character, and you burn through them as you are exploring the world, exploring the wilds, going into dungeons. These things compound because you can only carry so many of them, right? Remember, we talked about carrying capacity. That's a part of it. Another type of consumable is ammunition, arrows, bolts, sling stones. These are things that you need to carry with you. Every shot counts. And when OSR games are known to be a little bit more lethal, a little bit more deadly, using your ranged attacks is definitely a huge advantage. But when you have to track ammunition, there's only so much you can carry. When your ammunition starts to run out, you have to make decisions. Do you retreat out of the dungeon and head back home to get more ammunition? Or do you decide to take more risky attacks on your opponents using melee, not getting those arrows in to soften them up first? These are all decision points along the game. And lastly, you even have time. Yes, time is a resource that needs to be managed in OSR games. Every day spent traveling, every hour in the dungeon, these consume those other resources we talked about, but they also bring up other events into play. Random encounters or random events. These things happen on a time-based schedule, so the players need to make decisions on how fast or slow they want to go through these different areas because sometimes the clock is against them. Now, unlike some modern games where resources feel almost infinite, I think the scarcity of resources in OSR style games really force players to think strategically and make tougher choices. Now, when it comes to resource management and the idea of limited supplies and their impact on the game, these limitations aren't a bug that's annoying to the players. They're actually a feature designed into these older style games. The idea of limited resources have a profound impact on the actual gameplay at your table. Think about strategic decision making. Players can't just brute force their way through every encounter. They need to carefully consider if the fight is worth the risk and the potential costs in terms of ammunition, healing spells, healing potions, things like that. Maybe they should try to sneak past the goblins, or possibly they can parlay. There's no short rests in these OSR style games only full retreats and days or weeks of downtime with slow healing methods. Think about how limited supplies impact prioritization. What's more important, taking that extra suit of armor with you or additional rations for the long journey ahead? Players might have to weigh their options and prioritize based on their current goals and the dangers they anticipate along their adventure. I think that encumbrance is a huge prioritization element of OSR games that is overlooked in modern versions of the game. So often, the bag of holding is one of the first things that the party gets, so we can hand wave away any of those pesky encumbrance problems. But for most OSR games, 1 gold equals 1 XP. So what you're carrying and how much you can carry back is massive. A bag of holding to an OSR character is a huge boon on the amount of treasure that they can move in a given adventuring session. I just think that's a really interesting choice that is lost in later versions of the game. It doesn't necessarily mean it's better. I just think it's one that's really interesting and one I like to have at my tables. Limited resources also affect creativity and problem solving that the party faces. When resources are scarce, they need to become a little bit more inventive in their solutions. They might try to create some light sources from unconventional materials, or maybe they find alternate food sources along the way via foraging or hunting, but that also induces time pressures. Maybe they decide to use the environment to their advantage instead of relying solely on their purchased items back in town. There's a lot of different ways that this can come into play, but having that limited resources available to them really can change the dynamic and can change their decisions on what they're going to bring with them and how they're going to use it. Lastly, I think limited resources really can heighten the stakes and tension within your adventuring sessions. Knowing that resources are finite really raises the stakes in every encounter and every exploration turn that the party's taking. A wrong turn in the dungeon could mean running out of torches in the dark, a very bad thing when dark vision is much more restricted in older games than it is in modern ones. Likewise, a prolonged fight could deplete precious healing resources, and this could really create some genuine tension and possible excitement when the party needs to escape the dungeon. Are they going to fight their way out and risk it? Are they going to try to sneak by monsters? What's going to happen once they start to get low on those things? That can be really interesting and kind of fun to see how that plays out. Now, as a game master running a sandbox, embracing resource management really empowers your players, and it gives weight to their decisions and makes their successes feel a bit more earned because they planned out their attack and were either able to succeed or had to adjust and make changes along the way. Now, here are a few ways that your players can make some smart choices if you want to encourage them through these different aspects. Or if you're a player in a game, here are some things that you should consider before your party sets out on their next adventure in order to make the most of your limited supplies that you can take with you. Try to do some planning before you go. Before venturing out, you should discuss your goals and the potential challenges that your party might face along the way. And then you can really think about what supplies you'll realistically need in order to succeed in the adventure. And then also make sure that you are thinking about who's responsible for carrying what. It's possible that maybe you need to hire some hirelings to carry stuff for you. That's totally possible. You need to make those choices before you set out because you're not likely to find too many hirelings along the road. Think about the exploration aspect and try to gather some information ahead of time. Learning about the environment that you're heading into can really help your players anticipate the resource needs that they might have. Is there a town nearby where they can resupply? Are there rumors of exploitable resources in the area? Does your party already know the area so they know what they might be able to leverage along the way? Giving some thought to that and maybe doing some recon can really set you up for better success before you dive head first into it. Make sure you're doing some proper risk assessment in your planning. Evaluating the potential rewards versus the costs and the risks with your resources is really crucial. That ancient treasure in the desert is great, but is it worth the risk of running out of food or water in the desert where there is very little of either of those readily available? That's up for you to decide and if you can make that trek or not. Lastly, give some thought to how you might be able to adapt the tools that you are bringing or finding clever ways to use them. Players who can think on their feet and make these creative solutions to resource challenges that they might have are really going to thrive. How can that oil flask be used other than just lighting your lamp? Can it be used to light creatures on fire or create some sort of trap? There's different ways to use these tools if you give them some thought. And I think that's definitely worth doing ahead of time before you go into these different situations. Lastly, really tracking and communicating on these resources is going to set yourselves up for success. Keeping accurate track of your supplies and communicating those needs within the party is going to be essential. No one wants to realize that they don't have enough rope when you know that there's a vertical descent that you have to make to get wherever you're trying to go next. So if you can think about some of these things ahead of time, I really think you're going to set your party up for success and you're going to be able to make the most of your supplies, even though they're somewhat limited. As the game master, you play a vital role in making resource management a meaningful part of your exploration game experience. So, here are a few things you should be looking at and considering when you're running your game and making sure that these elements really help emphasize the resource management aspect of your OSR game. Be sure to track resources consistently. Be clear about how much things weigh, how long torches burn, how many rations are consumed per day. Consistency is really key. If you're already in the habit of doing this, then it's not really a burden to do or it's a drag on the game. I think it's pretty quick and easy to do. If they find a golden statue, tell them it takes 2 item slots or it weighs however many pounds. Boom, you're done. Move on to the next aspect of your game. They can mark it down. Easy. When it comes to resource management, be sure to provide realistic consequences. If the party runs out of food, then they should suffer the effects of starvation, whatever those are within your game rules of choice. If they lose their light source, then the darkness should be genuinely dangerous for them. It should give monsters opportunities to ambush them quite easily, should cause them to get lost quite easily. Think about the consequences. Play that out within the fiction of your game. Be sure to offer some opportunities for resupply, but not too easily. Towns, friendly NPCs, and even scavengers can provide opportunities to replenish resources. If there's a town nearby and that makes sense, then they should be able to resupply there. But not everything should be trivial or guaranteed. Maybe the scavenger has something that could be useful to the party, but they want something weird or esoteric, which is somewhat dangerous to get. That could be an interesting side quest for the party to take, gives them an interesting risk reward scenario. They can get this resource. If they do something somewhat risky, adds to the fiction, adds these interesting choices that they need to make because they have limited supplies available to them. In line with that, you can use the resource depletion to really drive the narrative that's emerging at your table. A lack of crucial resources can create interesting challenges and force the players to make difficult choices that really impact the story or whatever's happening within the area that they are currently adventuring in. Maybe there are hostages deeper in the dungeon, but the party's running out of light sources, so they choose to retreat back. What's going to happen to those hostages now that there's no one there to potentially save them? They're probably going to meet some sort of ill or poor fate. Likewise, don't forget to reward smart resource management. When players make interesting choices or clever decisions that save resources or find innovative solutions to shortages, I think you should really acknowledge and reward that ingenuity. If they come up with a plausible solution to some of their problems, don't be a stickler just because you want to see them without a light source. If they've come up with a neat idea, give that to them, let them use that light source. You could still say it only lasts for an hour or 2 hours or whatever, but that really sort of rewards them and it encourages them to continue to try to find interesting solutions to their problems in the future. If you shoot everything down, they're not going to do that. And then you're going to be wondering, why don't they come up with interesting or, crazy ideas in my game? That's fine if that's how you want to do it. It sounds pretty boring to me. So I would say encourage their ingenuity, encourage their innovation, and reward them when they come up with something pretty cool. Resource management in OSR sandbox games isn't about tedious bookkeeping. It's about creating a more immersive, challenging, and ultimately rewarding experience at your table. It fosters strategic thinking, encourages player agency really with that risk reward and those trade-offs that they have to make with the limited supplies they have available to them, and it makes victories feel significant and earned. What are your favorite stories of resource scarcity in any of the games you've played? Go ahead and share them in the comments below. I love reading them. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Consider checking out my monthly newsletter, Enchanted Nimbus. Thanks for hopping aboard the Earthmote. I'll see you in the next one.